They say your past defines you, but I learned it only defines you if you let it. We are worth more than our worst decisions, and I'm here to prove it. I came home with nothing but a bag and a dream, a heart full of pain but a vision to redeem. Gray sweatpants, white tee, but my soul was clean, 'cause freedom ain't the gate, it's the fight in between. They wrote me off, said he'll fall again, but they ain't seen a man reborn from within. Had to break old chains just to breathe again. Had to lose myself to find who I've been. Now I walk with purpose, no mask, no front. I ain't hiding from my past, I confront what it was. See, the system took time, but it couldn't take my heart, and that's why my mindset got its start.
Jonny, thanks for joining us. And your last name is pronounced McAdams. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah, and you are in what part of California?
I'm in Southern California, in Santa Clarita.
Santa Clarita. I when I was younger, I spent a little bit of time in San Diego, just really young. Like I went there about 4 years old, left when I was about 9. My mother tried to take me from a small town to have a little bit of better life, but San Diego wasn't nice to her, so she had to send me back to family. And she just had to get herself in order before she could send back for me, and then just life happened. I heard a little bit of your story, which before we start that, I want to say how wild it was, how you and I met. I'm not very familiar with TikTok. I do post a lot on TikTok, but I was, just for everyone to listen, I just wanted to try my hand and check out the live streams. And I started looking at live streams on TikTok, not familiar with it, never done it before, and just came across, you go by Jonny Fantastic. Is that what it is on TikTok?
Fantastic Jonny.
Fantastic Jonny. I'm sorry. Fantastic Jonny on TikTok. And I just sent you a message, and we started messaging, and then I said, hey, let's just have a chat. We had a short little chat, and it turned into this. So I've heard a little bit of your story, Jonny. If you would you share just a little bit of your story with our ambassador, John Reed over in England, and then we can go ahead and kick off a conversation and just share each other's missions.
Okay, so I'll try and compress it as much as possible, consolidate it. I grew up in the San Fernando Valley, which in California. I was pretty much raised by my mother, my biological mother, and my stepfather. I had 2 other siblings. I'm the youngest. I was around 13 years old. I was placed into an institution by my mother because I wasn't going to school, and I was doing graffiti on the streets. At that time, it was about 1990. I'm currently 48 years old, so I was 13 years old back then. In 1990s, if you know California, Los Angeles, graffiti was huge. I mean, it was almost as huge as New York. So
Tagging.
they call it the culture. So I was out there ditching school, graffitiing on buses, taking the bus to the Galleria, stealing, and all kinds of stuff. My mom worked a full-time job as a union representative, and my stepdad was working in the mortgage trade, right? So they were very, very busy and active in their job. So I believe my mom didn't know what to do. So she just felt she needed to place me somewhere where she didn't have to worry about me. So she placed me in this facility. The facility was more of like a mental hospital. After like a couple of months, they had basically told her that I wasn't fit to be in that type of facility, like that I belonged in jail because I was more of a criminal than a mental case. So I was discharged from there. I came home. I was a resentment toward my mother. I didn't even sit that. Yeah, it's a longer story, but I'm keeping it short. So after that, one day my mom took me to therapy, and we had spoke to my therapist, who I've been seeing for about a year, and I was able to convince my mom to let me use her car. And I was 15 at the time, no license. But my mom wouldn't let me use the car here and there. So I get home, and my mom changed her mind. She didn't want to let me use the car. So I got upset. They forced her out of the car. Took the car to go. I was going to see my girlfriend. Um, I realized I left my pager at home. So when I come back to get the pager, helicopters, police cars, you name it. They were there. They arrested me. They took me to jail, to juvenile hall. Um, I was placed. I was sentenced to suitable placement through the probation department. So I'm now on probation. When you're on probation, when you become a ward of the court in America, and that means the court can decide what they want to do with you while you're a ward of the court. So they sent me to suitable placement. A
Mhm.
beautiful place, beautiful place. I mean, it had everything. It had indoor pool. It had girls, of course. It was Jewish operated, so it had a temple. So they would have you go to temple every Friday. It had an on-campus school. It had its own little hospital. It had its own cafeteria. Um, all the amenities you can imagine, right?
Uh-huh.
Housed about maybe 200 something kids, but I was still, who I was. So I started selling marijuana there, and eventually, someone tried to rob me for my marijuana, and I ended up assaulting that person, and I was set to, I was arrested and taken. Oh, yeah, I was arrested and taken to the station and booked, and then they brought me back to the group home. Well, once that happened, once that happens, if you're arrested, that's a violation against your probation because you can't have any police contact. So I already knew once my probation officer found out that I was arrested and booked on a new charge that she was going to come get me and take me back to juvenile hall. So I escaped from that group home, and eventually I was apprehended and sent to another group home by the judge. And finally, the judge had enough after about maybe 3 more group homes because I kept escaping, and he sent me to a probation camp. I did about 9 months there. Uh, but throughout
And how
being in
old
all these,
how old was you at when you went to that probation camp? How old were you at this time?
I was 17 years old at that point. I was 17 years old. Throughout my times in all these facilities, all I was learning in there was more street activity because
Exactly.
they're housing you with criminals. There's
Not at
no
all.
real rehabilitation programs there. They're not teaching you a trade. All they want to do at the group homes is put you on medication. I'll never forget the first interview that I had with when I got to my first group home. I spoke to the therapist and I told him a little bit about my life. And he's like, "You must be so upset with your mother." I was like, "I am." He goes, "That causes depression." I'm like, "What's that?" Because depression is when like you can't get outside your head and you're just constantly in a bad mood and you're sad. And he's like, "But there's a medication that can help you." And I'm like, "Okay." So I started taking the medication and I started noticing I couldn't function properly. Like it was it was making something work, but then it was making something not work.
Yeah.
So I started noticing other kids that were coming there, they seemed normal, hyper as heck. All of a sudden, like 2 weeks into them staying there, they seemed all zombied out. They could barely hold a conversation. They couldn't stay on topic.
Yeah.
So I'm like, what's going on? They're just shoving this stuff. They're taking advantage of these kids' sorrows and what they're going through, and making them dependent on these medications. So of course I was a teenager. That thought only lasted so long. Um, I got out of the probation camp. I was 18. I had lost a very very good friend of mine. Um, it's funny when a quick story. We'll get to the funny part later, but um, when I got out, I was really depressed because I lost a very very good friend of mine while I was incarcerated, and I never got to see him again. Um, so I just kind of kept to myself, and I wanted to just be myself. So my mom got me a job working at a grocery store. I was there for a little bit. I couldn't stay focused. I
Mhm.
eventually moved away from that. I think when I started my turn, when I was out there in the street, I was selling drugs. I was selling cocaine. Um, I was stealing cars. I was heavily into stealing cars and selling the stereos and all the stereo system equipment. I'll never forget 1999, the year 2000. I'm now 21, I believe, or 22, and I'm playing my Dreamcast. And one day, which is the like a PlayStation type thing,
I
and my
love my
girlfriend comes in.
Dreamcast. I love my Dreamcast.
Yeah, they gypped us with that, man. They only made like 100 games and they shut it down. Shame on them.
But yeah,
So
shame on them.
so my girlfriend comes in the room while I'm playing the video game and she shows me this device, and I look at it and I'm like, what's this? She goes, it means I'm pregnant, and I'm like, whoa. So I'm like, well, let's that there's mistakes, there's malfunctions that may be wrong. So we went down to Thrifties at the time, and we bought 2 more tests, and sure enough, that line didn't change, man. And I'll never forget when I went to that doctor's office at the clinic, and I heard the ultrasound. It's like that was the most scariest sound in the world to me.
Of course.
The most scariest sound in the world, because it was like, man, this is real life. I'm still I want to sell drugs and be this important guy in the streets, because that's what I believed while I was selling drugs. I don't think I was making enough money to really prosper. I just felt important and empowered. So I'm like, man, this is gonna take away from who I am. What am I gonna do with a baby? So her parents were against her having a baby with me, or having a baby period. And so they were basically forcing her to have an abortion. I was against that. I told them there's no way I would do it. So they convinced me one day to go to an interview to a adoption specialist, an agency. So just to please the mom, I went and I listened to the guy about 45 minutes. He opened up his catalog, showed me all these smiling kids and all that. He didn't know my background, where I came from. I came from that group home where I was at. I met kids that didn't even know what nationality they were. Some of them didn't have parents, and like, so I told him, okay, thanks for your time, but I'm not interested. So the mom brought me back home, and she told me that, we should be having a child or whatever. My kid's mom eventually, well, while she was pregnant, she told me she couldn't take the pressure from her parents. She was just going to have an abortion. I threatened her, told her that if you do that, then things are going to change for you. My son, we ended up having the child. When we actually found out that she was pregnant, I had been broken up with her prior to that for a while, and she was messing with someone else, so I had resentment towards her. So when she had the child, I couldn't look at her like someone I loved. So we had a very violent relationship. I ended up going to jail for, we're not gonna say what charge it was, but I ended up going to jail. And at this point, I was 2000. I was about 24 when I went to jail. I was broken up with her. My kid was 2 at the time, so 2002. Sorry, 2002. I called home. You can call home from jail, which they call collect call. So I call home collect, and another man answered the phone.
Ooh, you
And
mentioned that to me.
I could still hear his voice. Still hear his voice, and it was a man I was familiar with. And I was like, "What are you doing there?" He's like, I'm her man now. You're not in the picture no more." I'm like, "The hell I'm not. My son, I want to speak to my son." And he's telling me, "You better ask me nicely." Oh, I had just got sentenced that week, so I got sentenced to a year in jail. So I'm just thinking like, oh my God, I'm gonna be going through this for a whole year in jail where I'm useless. I can't do anything to this guy. I wanted to hurt him so bad. And when I hung that phone up, it taught me something. I woke up right when I hung that phone up. It's like, you know what? I got to get out of here. I started applying for work release, which is what'll let you out of jail, which you got to work for the police department, basically clean up cop cars and all that. Or I was applying to do weekends in jail. They let you out and you do weekends. I was applying for everything. Nothing was going my way. Nothing. Well, Arnold Schwarzenegger, who was our I'm sure you know who that is. He was our governor at the time of California, and he was cutting budgets drastically across the board. So they were letting people out of the county jail like in the thousands, like every day.
I remember that.
Early releases. So if they got sentenced to a year, they were doing like 2 months on that 1 year. So I'm thinking at that point, I already had 4 months in. I was already in 4 months. So I'm like, I'm going to get lucky. Didn't happen. One day, one of my cellie gets released. And when he got released, he left his Bible behind. And I remember I did something stupid out in the unit, so they locked me in my unit. I couldn't leave my unit. I mean, leave my cell. I was punished. The sheriffs locked me in my room. So I just
Mhm.
got bored and I cracked open the Bible. I cracked it open in Matthew. And when I opened it up to Matthew, it was a verse where it said that, don't you know, as your God, I will open up every path for you. If there's a rock blocking your path, I will remove it. If you need water and food, I will bring it to you. And man, I got on my knees and said my first prayer I've ever really said sincerely, for the first time for not being in trouble. And at 4 a.m. in the morning, I heard my name on the intercom in my cell. It said, McAdams, roll it up. So I did 9 months on that year. I was released. And when I came out of jail, all I could think about was my son.
Mm.
And so I reached out to the mom. She brought him over. We hung out. We tried to, pick up where we left off at, and it just wasn't happening. We weren't good for each other. I made the decision no. So she said that, hey, I'm gonna move with my parents in Vegas then if we're not gonna be together. So I had no support. My parents just were like, leave her alone. Like, just leave it alone, man. She's just gonna put you through trouble, a lifetime of trouble. I was seeing all those kids with no parents. I couldn't do it. My
Mhm.
roommate, who I was at the first group home with, he hung himself in our closet, and he had no parents, to my knowledge. And this is the guy. This is like the first. I think this was like the first time I ever showed any type of compassion. Where I came back from a group home visit from Christmas, and he had nothing in the room. I had all these gifts, so I gave him one of the gifts, and I'll never forget it. I didn't know what was in that box. But when he unwrapped it, it was a portable Walkman CD player, and that was a hot item when the Walkman CD players came out.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
wanted to
yeah,
take it
yeah.
back so bad, but I couldn't because I knew he had nothing. So when go fast forwarding back to me being 25 with the kid, do I want to be involved in his life? I couldn't walk away because I knew what it looked like. I went ahead and got the only job that would accept me, working at Sears department store, making minimum wage, which back then it was like 475, 575. I've never made that least amount of money before in my life. I go down to a help center in Van Nuys, and I tell them I want to take my son's mom to court because I want to get visitation rights. So they have an agency that teaches you how to file the paperwork, how to file a motion. So I filed a motion, and I get the toughest family court judge in the world, which her name was Patricia Ito. Patricia Ito was married to the judge that was part of the notorious O.J. Simpson trial, Mr. Ito.
Okay,
That was her
okay,
husband. And, and,
okay.
and this lady played no games. She didn't want to hear. She only want to hear facts. She'll cut you off if you ain't telling the facts. She'll So I went into her courtroom very, very intimidated and very scared because I had no lawyer. Everybody told me I needed a lawyer. I didn't have
Mhm.
money for a lawyer. So I basically tell her what I was there for, and she said, "Listen, you're a convicted felon for a spousal crime. There's no way I could give you custody. You currently have a restraining order against you." And so I said, "Okay." So I go to the restroom. A lawyer sees me there, and he says, "Hey, man, I like the way you spoke. I think you could represent yourself, but where you're at right now with this type of judge, I think you need to get a lawyer." So I'm like, "Well, how much is a lawyer?" He said, "Minimum $5,000." So this is where a good lawyer comes in, I believe. So I needed that $5,000 back. When I sold cocaine, I used to sell it at a strip club, inside a strip club, because I had a buddy that was pretty much a bouncer. He was the bouncer at the strip club, so we sold it inside, and he was my supplier as well. So I show up to that strip club to get fronted by my previous supplier, but he wasn't there. But as I'm leaving, someone calls my name, and I turn around, and it's this gentleman that used to just work at a gym who always wanted to be part of our crew, but he was never worried of that. My connect never gave him any attention. So I see
Right.
him, and then I go, "Hey, what are you doing here?" He's like, "I'm you now. When you went to jail, I became you." So I'm like, "Oh, okay, okay, looks good on you." And I'm like, he goes, "What are you doing here?" And I said, "I want to get fronted a 9 pack, a 9 pack, which is a quarter kilo of cocaine,
Yeah, yeah.
and that'll get me what I need." At the time, I think the street value, I think I could get it at the time for 3,000. They were going for like 4,500.
Yeah.
So that pack is
Yeah.
9 ounces.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, he tells me, he goes, "Look, man, you just got out of jail, dude. I want to see. You're actually a good dude, man. You don't even belong here. I want to see you do good." He said, "Look, there's a place called April Staffing Agency in Glendale. Go down there and ask for a lady named Diane and tell her that you want to work at Western Studio Services." And so I'm like, "What?" He goes, "Yeah." So Western Studio Services is basically a warehouse that 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 stores all of the movie sets and scenery and vehicles for movies, right? And they have currently they had a partial union contract. So I jumped into that head first. The next day I called, that lady put me on. She go get work proofs. I went to Westwood Studios with loading trucks. I mean, you're working with the roughest of the roughest. All these guys are all convicts. But after working 60 days, Westwood Studios have the option of hiring you on permanently if they like they like your work ethics. So they hired me. And after 17 months, you could join the union full on and go work in the studios. So at the time, it was $12 an hour working at Western. Well, when you work for the agency, it was $10 an hour. Remember, I came for $4.75. So once I got hired on the Western, it was like $12.50 or something if you were a lead man. When you went the option if you went into the studios, it was it was $26 an hour, full benefits.
Mhm.
So praise God, I eventually made it into the studios after 2 years, and I was actually fired from Western Studios, and someone from the union, from my current union now, saw what they saw in me, and they picked me up and brought me into the studios. Um, and I was
I would like to interject here for a second, Johnny.
of course,
I know John Reed is chomping just as much as I'm chomping what you just
one
told me
second.
about. Go ahead.
Okay,
What what
just
what
letting
I-
my
what I
girlfriend in.
want
I hear you.
what I want to jump back is I want to highlight when you went to when you had your lawyer fine, which I know all about that, and what that ultimately leads to most people is turning back towards, like I've told you before, the past to welcome you back with open arms. But when you have a lawyer payment that needs to be paid, you turn to what you know, and you turn to someone who said, I'm doing this now," and you said, "Hey, front me that 9 pack." Of course we know that, but I see the highlight. I see the highlight myself of faith, of a higher power, with that gentleman that you spoke of that said, "You know what? I'm not giving you this opportunity. Instead, I'm going to turn you to this other pathway forward." And that pathway forward led you to that studio. That's to me that's what jumped at me firsthand. And I would like to talk a little. How do you see that yourself? Because I see it just
Yeah,
a little bit. Do you see that as a moment of God or a higher power or someone saying, "No, I don't want you to do this. Here's a path forward. If you just open that door, I'm going to provide that door for you."
yeah. That's why I had said in the beginning when I had said that now on the path, the topic I was going to go into had a lot to what. That's when God came in. I believe He
Mhm.
stepped in and put me on the path that I'm currently on now, 20 years later.
Yeah.
Um, but it's funny because that person sold drugs from that point on for probably another 15 years, and I remain associate of his, but never, engaged with anything like that. And when I felt like he was ready, I got him a job in the studios. Uh, he didn't do well. I mean, I got it. So become a full on union member in my union, you had to work 30 days, 30 working days, which was hard to get. So I got
Mhm.
him his 30 days on one show, working on the biggest show at the time. Actually, it was called NCIS
Ooh,
with
it's a good one.
Mark
Yeah.
Harmon. Yeah, I
Yeah.
got him in as a craft service member. I'm a grip. I work as a grip for the motion picture industry, but I got him in as craft service. But it was he was making $40 an hour. He's
Yeah.
never made that full benefits, but he messed it
Yeah.
up. So I washed my hands and just walked away from him completely.
That's not your fault. That's not your
Yeah,
fault.
no, it isn't. I paid it forward. I reciprocated it. Uh, but but what brought me back to this group home. This is what's most important to me, because remember, I ran away from that group home in 1992. And what brought me back to the as a mentor now is there was a girl who was my girlfriend. Um, and when I AWOL'd, I felt bad about leaving because I was like, someone's gonna take my girl, right? So I always thought about her over the years. Always thought about her. And I'll never forget when my son was about 13 years old, one day he wanted to do something. He was at my house and he wanted to do something. Um, and oh, you know what? I'm sorry. So when I went into the whole career thing, kind of left the child court, didn't we? The family court, right? Yeah, we did. I did leave that when I went into what I was trying to do to get a lawyer. So you guys mind if I go back to that?
Of course, John.
So
See, I had a feeling John is chomping at the bit to to say something. John.
Yeah, thank you, Rusty. Thank you. I'm listening to your story, Jonny, with amazement. And I've got to say, there's a couple of things really. The story you're giving here is stories I've heard in a similar vein from other people over the years. That pathway from childhood into crime. And it's a problem that I'm currently addressing in the UK. So that's my interest in it. Secondly, I would say that what you've got on your hands here, Rusty, is at least 2 episodes, if not 3, because this story of how we got to where we are today and what we're doing about it and what we're hoping we can achieve in the future is a gripping story. And it's one that is well told on a podcast. So we should do this, and we should record a second episode, and even a third wouldn't go amiss, I don't think. But yeah, when I first started doing this kind of work, initially all I was doing was storytelling into care homes. So care homes in the UK are where Rusty worked in a care home in the States there for a while, in Springfield, I believe, Rusty, in the laundry, where older people go to live, and they may have dementia, they may have mental health problems, they may be simply getting old and frail. But the care homes in the UK tend to have some kind of activity or entertainment, if you like, laid on. And people like me can go in and tell stories. And that's what I started doing. And it was only when I was introduced via a prison governor, or what you would call a warden in the States, with a simple question: do you think this would work in prison, John? And I said, I've got no idea. Why don't we give it a try? So I went into a prison and I told the story of Elvis Presley because I like Elvis Presley music. And I told the story of his life and his early death, of course, and played some of the music that he recorded during his lifetime. And it was absolutely a wonderful experience. And it led me to work in prisons, and still does to this day. Although in England at the moment, it's extremely difficult to get paid for what you're doing. So if you've got funding, if someone's going to throw money at you, or if you've got a grant available to you, or if you're simply a richer person, you can get plenty of work in prisons, but the prisons themselves don't want to pay for it. And that's another story. So I'm in the process of pivoting my business, which would be aimed at the younger Jonny. And looking back on your childhood, Jonny, there are so many things I want to question, not least your home environment, with mum and dad, and where was dad, and what drove mum to do what mum did. Because to me, as an outsider, and I don't mean to judge you in any way at all, but to me, your mother making the choice she did was a strange choice. How many mothers would do that? There must have been something else going on in her life to drive her to do that. I'm somebody that goes into prison and never wants to know what the crime is, and never wants to know what the sentence is, because I feel that if you were to say to me, well, I'm a double murderer and I've just served 40 years, it might make me think of you in a certain light. Whereas if I don't know either of those two facts, then I'm just looking at you as a man, and I'm a man. I'm 77 years of age at the moment, and I've been around the block once or twice, so I've met lots of people. They're very interesting. But I believe that if we make stories like this available to children coming through the system, that it may very well divert a lot of them away from a life of crime.
Mhm.
And I'm currently working with a school. I live in Worcestershire in England, and we have a school in what we call the Black Country, which is It's not based on any color of anybody's skin. It's just goes back to the industrial heritage that was around in the 18 and 1900s. And in that school, we have what we call special needs children, and these children are children that have, through circumstances that are not of their own making. So yours would be a very good example of it. Finishing up in what most people would think of as a naughty children's school. So what they might have done in traditional schooling would upset the teacher, would upset the teaching process for the other children in the class. And eventually they get thrown out of school and they put into a special facility, which in many ways is like a prison. It's got a big fence around it. They can't leave, and they get sent in by taxi every day because their parents might have spurned them. They might be living in a care home or with foster parents or whatever it is. And that school tries to knock them into shape for adulthood so that they at least stand a chance of getting some kind of job. So, for example, in the school I'm working at the moment, they have go-karts, and they teach the children how to strip the engines down and how to put them back together again. And then they race them around the school field. Now, you would never get that in a traditional school, but you get it in this school because it's felt that it's better to learn something and nothing at all. But in my time in prison, I meet so many people that have gone through the routine that you've gone through, although obviously different details. So that's why I think we should set this episode you're currently recording, Rusty, as the foundation, and we should go on to explore, well, what we're going to do about it then, because you're currently doing something in California to allow the children to avoid the route that you took. And that's exactly what I'm doing. And that's very similar to what Rusty's doing. So, hey, let's make a podcast in 2 or 3 episodes that could be used in school to divert the children away from the inevitable route they would go to if they hadn't met you. So I don't
We could
your religious convictions, not because I don't believe there's a God, but I'm not convinced there's anybody out there really, but I do believe in fate, and I'm not knocking your faith at all. Good luck to you for having the faith. And if that's what's helping you, I'm all for it, but I don't have that benefit, I'm afraid.
we could definitely call this Jonny McAdams episode 1, Jonny McAdams episode 2, or part 2, or part 3. We can do whatever we want because this is our podcast. It's Conversations with Why Not Mindset, and I'm the CEO of Why Not Mindset. So I believe I can do what I want.
Of course you can. Yeah, and you do.
Jonny, go ahead with. Sorry for interrupting. We just wanted to throw a little. Go ahead with your story, man.
So we'll go back to when I was going to court to get visitation rights with my son, and then again he was now 2 years old, and his mom wanted to take him to Vegas, move out of California. So when I got the job at Western, I went back to court and I represented myself without lawyers. The judge actually had a one-on-one conversation with my son, with my kid's mom and I, and she said she was impressed how the way we conducted ourselves in the court. She was a little concerned with the way our families were behaving in the courtroom, but when she pulled us aside, she told us that she thinks we're going to do well at co-parenting, but she did tell me that she can't stop her from leaving the state. So we went back in the courtroom, and her lawyer asked the judge that I get monitored visits. And I had this one, my kid's mom had allowed me to take my son to Disneyland when she wanted to be with her boyfriend. She would drop him off at my house when she wanted to be with the boyfriend. And I always took pictures. So I asked if I could give those pictures to the judge when the lawyer requested that proposal, and the judge looked at the pictures. She's like, well, he didn't need a monitor visit to go to Disneyland. So she denied her request. And I was awarded only 1 week in a month to see him, but it was something, so I went to Vegas. We alternated. 1 month I'd have to go to Vegas, 1 month she'd have to come down. And again, I'll see him for the whole weekend. I never missed one visit. I never missed one child support payment. I never brought a girl around my son. Nothing like that time with him. It's like everything. I think what made me really change was that someone believed in me. My friend believed in me, or whoever you want to call them. The judge believed in me. And so once people start believing you and showing that, it's encouraging.
Hmm.
It's encouraging because you truthfully don't even believe in yourself. Your parents didn't believe in you. Your parents put you in a facility instead of them being parents and taking care of their responsibility. They threw you away so they can relax,
Hmm.
so they don't have to
Hmm.
think about you no more.
Yeah, of course.
You know, and I didn't let that. If it wasn't for these kids that I met that had less than me, I don't think I would have had the strength. I would have had this strength to not let that bother me. You know, but what brought me fast forward to what brought me to back to the group home at to be a mentor at the time I was this was in 2020. Well, actually, I came back in 2013 for Alumni Day because I found out there was Alumni Day. Well, there was a girl, my ex-girlfriend. I always wanted to wonder what happened to her. So one day when my son was 13, yeah, in 2013, um, he asked me for something. I can't remember, and I told him, just joking around, like, you know what? There's someone I'm looking for. You're good at the internet stuff. There's a girl I'm looking for. If you find her, I'll do this for you, or I'll give you this. It was like a let him stay up late or something, or watch a certain movie.
Mhm.
So I went back to what I was doing, and sure enough, he came back and showed me, gave me a printout, and he found her. And
Mhm.
I was like, wow. So so I s- it made me go back to the group home because I used to always ask about her. You know, no one knew anything. So in 2020, one day I'm at the alumni day, and I'm I'm sitting there with one of the staff members, and there's a kid walking down the hill with it looks like his dad. So I asked, "Oh, is that his dad?" And she goes, "No, that's probably his mentor." Because most of the kids there don't have, fathers uh,
Yeah.
that are involved. So I go, "Mentor?" She goes, "Yeah, we have a mentor program." And I'm like, "Well, where do I sign up?" And she goes, "Well, the problem is and she did this yesterday. You gotta do a life scan." And I'm like, "Okay." So I didn't tell you guys this part. I got all my felonies. I had 4 felonies. I got them all reduced to misdemeanors, which means you restored all your rights. You could now vote. You could own a firearm. You could do whatever you want, right?
Yeah.
So I told her I'm good with taking the live scan. So I take the live scan. Child Services denied me to be a mentor, to volunteer, broke me in half. So the group home said they would do an exemption on my behalf. So they did an exemption and it got denied. So I uh, appealed it, and a administrative law judge granted my appeal. And so I got assigned a hearing. So one of the the directors of the facility of the group home, I asked her if she would come testify on my behalf. Now this lady I have a history with. She was there when I was there, and I felt like she never liked me. So she
Yeah.
told me, you know what date is it? And I told her the date. She goes, that's actually a Jewish holiday, but if your hearing takes place before this time, I could show up. So this was during the pandemic. So all they were doing were telephonic hearings. So I did a 4-hour telephonic hearing with a law judge and child services, their lawyer, and of course that individual from the group home. She came and testified on my behalf, which she did an excellent job. And all they kept talking to me about that crime I did in 1999, that concerned
And
them.
if I may interject, you're doing all this during this time just so you can be a mentor to the youth,
Yes.
to make change, for the to provide the to provide what you didn't have, which I can relate with, because I didn't have a father when I was growing up. I didn't have a father. My father had never been around when I grow up. And I'm not leading this into blaming my my not having a father into I accept my crime, but my father was never around. So, and my mother worked 3 jobs. She worked and worked and worked. So I was I was brought up and grown by the streets. My family was the my family was the meth cooks, was the drug dealers. My family, that's where I found my belonging. And it sounds like that's what you're wanting to do, is to become a mentor, and you're fighting all these barriers after barriers after barriers to help these youth not go down the road that I saw myself go down. And I could see myself, if I would have had someone like you wanting to tell me, hey, young brother, hey, I I know you're trying to be cool. I know, but the people you're hanging out with are going to lead you down the wrong path, and that's what it sounds like. You're just busting barrier after barrier, and you're willing to go through all this just so you can reach out and make that change that you didn't have when you was younger. And I can see that, and I can only imagine if I would have had a mentor when I was 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 years old. I might not have learned how to make methamphetamines. I may not have did interstate transportation in the end. If I would have had someone like you willing to bust through all those barriers just to change one person's life. So automatically I want to say thank you for thank you.
I think you're saying it absolutely right, Rusty. And I think you're coming to the end of your time now, Rusty. So what we should do, we've laid the foundation here. We should make episode 2 and even episode 3, if the story goes to it, and issue these out, one after the other, because the message is so strong. And it matters not that I'm on one side of the Atlantic and you're the other side, Johnny. The experiences you've had are shared by lots of children in our country.
Worldwide.
And
worldwide.
So the message in the podcast is good throughout. But yeah, I think we should stop here, Rusty. And I'm going to have to say goodbye anyway. So we're running out of time.
All right.
Hey, man, thank you for this opportunity, guys. I'm very, very grateful to be here this morning with you guys, man, and being able to share my story and you guys seeing it for what it is. You guys are great listeners, and you guys were chosen. I can tell you that.
Johnny,
it's easy to be a great listener when you're listening to a great story.
Johnny, before we do cut stop this, do you have anything you would like to say, or any way anybody can get a hold of you if they want to get a hold of you? Do you have any plugs you want to give real quick before we stop the recording?
This is what I would like to say.
Go ahead.
I would like to say this to all of the people that are incarcerated. I know in my state, each prisoner that is incarcerated in the prisons, it costs them $133,000 a year for each prisoner. $133,000 a year. There's 30 prisons in California itself. Guys, that is your money. That's money I'm paying. I don't want you to come out the same person that you went in there as. So you know what you need to do? You need to hold them to that dollar amount. How much of that money is being used on rehabilitation and reforming? That's your money. You guys need to be putting in petitions and grievances and saying what you guys want in that prison, whether it's woodshop, whether it's parenting classes. I know there's a few programs, which are BS, but guys, there's so many programs out there that you guys could take advantage of. Ask. If you have a caseworker, send them emails. Don't talk to them on the phone. Send them emails. If you have a probation officer, send them emails with your request. Because when you send an email, it's a formal way of communication, and they can't ever deny that was never communicated to them. Also, anyone that's in California and you're getting ready to transition out in the real world from your group home, you have no parents, and you didn't, and you have nowhere to go, and they're just going to send you to a shelter, because that's what they do to most of these kids when they turn 18. They send them to a homeless shelter, and they got to figure it out from there. What you should do before you leave that shelter, you ask your social worker to tell you about transitional housing programs for foster youth in California. They have these programs for you guys. So utilize that money, guys, that they're basically extorting from your sorrows, from your mistakes. I want you to come back better. I want you to come back better, guys. I believe in you guys. At one point, you guys did the right thing. At one point, you did the right thing in your life. Find out again. Powerful message, Johnny. Let's also, Homeboy Industries. That's a huge industry in California. Father Boyle does a great thing with that program. They offer free tattoo removal. I've been going there since 2003, getting my tattoos removed. I've got over 15 tattoos removed off my body. Brilliant.
Brilliant, Jonny. Let's definitely have a second episode if you're okay with that. Let's stay in touch.
I'm okay with that.
How can someone get a hold of Jonny McAdams? How does someone get a hold of you?
Just go on TikTok. You know, go to Fantastic Johnny. We'll start there. You know,
Right.
and if I feel that's you know it's a sincere approach, we'll go from there.
Sounds great. Sounds great. Sounds great. Thank you so much for your time. When
Thank
I
you,
stop
Rusty.
when I stop this recording, it will still be on live. But thank you so much for doing this. Let's definitely have us a second session.